I wanna take you for a ride.
You know how in shooter games people tend to try and classify things into roles? Maybe you're familiar with Overwatch where you got like support, tank, and DPS. We try to do that with Splatoon. You know, you got like the front line, mid line, and back line. The problem with this game is it was not built with roles in mind at all. What roles people use for this game change all the time. I think something that Splatoon 3 has made a lot more common though is fake backlines. Anchor weapons are classified by being the longest range weapon in your comp, something that typically outranges pretty much everything in the game, and an important trait of them is you don't want more than one of them. You know, the classic example. You don't want 2 chargers on your team. It just kind of stacks on something a little bit too much. This holds true for a lot of other weapons like the E-Leader or Hydra Spiraling or Tri-Stringer, just to name a few. But then you have some weapons that have enough range to be able to comfortably hang back, but also have enough flexibility to where running it with another anchor isn't out of the question. This could be something like the Bamboozler, the brand new Heavy Spiraling, or the Custom Squelcher with its more aggressive kit. Typically, you can see some of these together. Custom Squelcher and Heavy Spiraling are very common because both of these want to be more aggressive at times, so when one of them wants to do that, the other one can hang back. And between Heavy's speed and Squelcher's insane damage and area of effect, both weapons have no problem being more aggressive than typical anchors. Because of that, it's kinda awkward to classify them as a backline. But why am I talking about this? Because I think the 2 best examples of fake anchor weapons are the Jet Squelcher and Douser Dualies. And I think these weapons are both incredibly interesting because they fall into this role. The custom Jet Squelcher in Splatoon 1 was basically the first fake backline in the entire series. Sure, it had the range and the paint to hang back like a typical anchor, but it had burst bombs and Kraken. These were both tools that really didn't make sense to use if you did hang back. They were much better at supporting other weapons and following them around, something Jet Squelcher could do with its mobility compared to typical anchors. And Kraken is a special that's made to go in and get kills, especially in Splatoon 1. So it forced Jet Squelcher into positions where it had to go in and fight more aggressively. Both Burst Bomb and Kraken had their own unique trade-offs. Burst Bomb ate into a lot of your ink efficiency so you couldn't paint as much, and it was tricky to use it both for yourself to be able to make sure you could keep up with better fighting weapons, and also use it for your teammates who would want that support if you're picking the weapon in a comp. And Kraken of course takes away both the main weapon and the sub, which could leave your team in a bad situation if it's not timed properly. The core identity of Jet Squelcher there was kind of lost in Splatoon 2 though. It got a lot of buffs, as most shooters did, but I think the thing that really changed how it played was the weapon kits. Whereas in Splatoon 1, Jet Squelcher was built with a kit that forced it to be more aggressive, Splatoon 2 gave it specials that were best when used at a distance, Tenna Missiles and Stingray. Missiles was also a special that you could spam quite frequently. It had no cooldown in that game, was very powerful, and could serve as a quick instant ink tank refill, which is what Jet Squelcher became known for in that game. Painting at a safe distance and spamming missiles, or painting, burst bombing to keep itself alive, and then popping Stingray, which is a far cry from the identity it had in Splatoon 1. And I think the devs were aware of this problem going into Splatoon 3, because Jet Squelcher's kits feel very toned back in this game. Dart and Mist are just incredibly weak sub-weapons. Dart seems to be treated like a weaker burst bomb they're too afraid to give to weapons like Long Rapid or Bucket, and the specials of both Ink Vac and Ink Storm are pretty limited in individual power. They're very coordination focused and not really that high up balance-wise either. This did accomplish Jet Squelcher not being a broken special spammer at the top of the meta, but it kinda left Jet Squelcher as this uninteresting, bland weapon. At least the vanilla kit can be kind of fun on paper, but it doesn't really feel like you have the same options you ever did in Splatoon 1. And I think that's where Douser Dualies does a lot of stuff different. Dousers doesn't have the range of Jet Squelcher, but it's still a little bit more than Squeezer's effective range, capable of outranging most weapons in the game. Its damage is a little bit weaker than Jet Squelcher, but now you have this brand new dodge roll. You only have one of these and it has a lot of end lag, but the turret mode paints incredibly well and actually outranges short range weapons. I think this dodge roll is flexible in being able to be used both aggressively and defensively. You can chase kills with the long dodge roll distance, or use it to deal with opponents who are rushing you down where your kill time would normally be too slow. However, I think the best part about Dousers is its paint. Not in a the sense that its paint is good, in the sense that its long-range paint isn't that good. It's not bad by any means. Dousers gets a lot of paint at the end of the game, but Dousers doesn't paint anywhere near as well as a Jet Squelcher. I mean, just look at this. And I think that's a good thing. Douser Dualies are forced to either focus on supporting their team more, or to use their turret mode, which has inherently less range and mobility, in order to have a higher output of specials. It forces the weapon to be more of something that wants to pocket other teammates or constantly exert pressure, rather than painting passively. It's actually the main change I'd want to happen to Jet Squelcher, and paired with a 200p special weapon, it ensures that it's not spamming it a lot. In addition to this, I think that the custom Douser Dualies is the closest thing to Splatoon 1 Jet Squelcher in Splatoon 3. Burst Bomb has the exact same trade-off it does with Jet Squelcher. It makes it a really good tool to pocket teammates, but it could also be used for the main weapon. While Douser has weaker damage, it saves the same amount of shots to kill as it does with Jet Squelcher. A direct Burst Bomb saves 2 shots, anywhere else saves 1 shot. Because Douser Dualies, like Jet Squelcher, has a mediocre kill time with just a long-range mode, you have reasons to want to save Burst Bombs for yourself, while it's also very clear with the weapon range that it has that it's good at supporting teammates. I think where it differs in playstyle is Tri-Strike. This isn't a Kraken and doesn't come with the same trade-offs, and it also has no cooldown. But since this weapon doesn't paint enough to spam the special, it's not that big a deal, and I think in this case works in Douser's favor. Compared to Splatoon 1, resources that help get your team in are much more important, especially for the backless comps that it would run, and its comps would be a lot more limited if it didn't have something like Tri-Strike. I also think compared to Jet Squelcher, the weapon has a lot more tools to do well up close and position more aggressively, so having a special that forces you to space a little bit more does keep the weapon more in check. Though something else cool about the weapon is I think compared to Jet Squelcher, it's a lot easier to run this with a typical backline, since its flexibility allows it to be a little bit more aggressive if it needs to, which I think just opens up things even more. However, there is one thing I'd like to critique about Douser. While its paint is much better balanced compared to Jet Squelcher, it's probably still a little bit too low. I think when we're looking for an enabler of different weapon compositions, with how many weapons don't paint well right now in the meta, it's important that Dousers paint enough to enable other options. It should not be as good as Jet Squelcher, it should just be a little bit closer than it is right now. So now that I've discussed why I like Dousers, I do think Jet Squelcher is savable. I don't think a paint nerf is ever going to happen, so the only way this weapon ends up really healthy is if it fits 3 requirements. 1, it has an aggressive team-oriented kit. 2, it has a special that has some form of cooldown or way to prevent it being spammed. And 3, it has a special it can't use safely at a distance. Now, what kit you could pick has a lot of different options. Rather than the straight-up reference kit of Burst Bomb Kraken though, I think the best option would be a special that could still help its team get in a little bit more for comp building, while doing it in a very different way compared to Tri-Strike. I would still give it back its Burst Bomb that it used to have before, but for the special weapon, my candidate would be Zipcaster. Now, it sounds a little bit crazy, but Zipcaster is one of the better specials power-wise. Jet Squelcher has solid ink efficiency to be in the special for a while, can take unique angles with it, and actually combos decently well with it too. Zipcaster's AoE is very similar to Burst Bomb and something Jet Squelcher can use, while at the same time, this special is still limited with having a recall and is a bit of a transformation special similar to Kraken. So I think it keeps limitations to make the playstyle more similar to Splatoon 1, while being less selfish and having more team utility. And it's also an especially unique way to contest other anchor weapons, which is something really important for backless comps like this, especially if you're going against things like Pencil. It's definitely not the only option though. I think other specials like Jetpack, Big Bubbler, and Super Chump could also work, though they would have their own fair share of downsides. Jetpack would overlap with Ballpoint a little bit, Super Chump is paint heavy which overlaps with Douser, and Big Bubbler can be used a little bit more passively than I would like, which is why I picked Zipcaster here. I think Jet Squelchers and Douser Dualies are distinct from each other main weapon-wise, and while they're obviously very similar, it's a cool archetype of weapon that I feel is very underdeveloped in Splatoon 3. So I hope that both Douser Dualies gets further development to be utilized more, as well as Jet Squelcher gets a third kit that embraces what it started with in Splatoon 1. But let me know what you guys think and what you want to see with these weapons in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.